Come on into the ditch. I'm your resident ditch witch, Tara Tyne, and we're about to get witchy, whether you like it or not. Today we are here at the ancient Emain Macha, otherwise known as Navan Fort. Now, believe it or not, it actually has nothing to do with the Navan you're probably familiar with in County Meath. It's actually in Armagh and used to be the seat of High Kings here, a little bit like the Hill of Tara in County Meath, but it was the centre of ancient Ulu or Ulster. First up, Navan Fort Visitors Centre. When people think of Emain Macha, they often think of St. Patrick. It is thought that the stories about him establishing a 5th century church nearby in Armagh City are true, and there may have been a number of reasons why he chose that particular place. But then, being close to a site which had evidence of being spiritually and socially significant to its community for over 7,000 years seems a natural choice of location for the new Christian religion that's sweeping your part of the world. Why wouldn't he build it there? And indeed, it's Emain Macha's ancient history that we've come to explore today. The Navan Fort Visitors Centre is about 45 minutes by car from Dundalk. Admission is free, and everyone who's recommended it to me over the past year has made a point of saying how excellent their coffee shop is, so don't worry too much about bringing a picnic. Their gift shop is also a bit of a hidden gem, featuring local made crafts and some really good reference books by Irish authors, including a whole kids section full of Irish mythology. Also, don't panic if you don't make it during opening hours. You can visit Navan Fort directly by following Google directions to the site itself. Just be sure not to leave the car in the car park after closing time, or else you'll be walking home. Oh, the Tandragee man. I have heard of this. So the Tandragee man is said to represent an ancient Irish king called Loughnashade. He was the one with the whole new arm out of silver because he wasn't without blemish, which was very important back in the day when deciding on your next High King. But this is said to represent him, Loughnashade. He was actually the leader of the Tuatha De Danann when they first arrived in Ireland. It was at the Battle of Moreiras, which you've heard me mention before, where the Tuatha De Danann challenged the Firbolg for dominion over Ireland, essentially, and Loughnashade was leading the invading force, the Tuatha De Danann, at the time. We've got a prehistoric dog skull here. It's the largest prehistoric dog skull found to date anywhere in Ireland. And it's about 3,000 years old. Look at him there, he looks about the size of, I suppose a greyhound. And here we have the skull of a barbary ape. Now, I'm not sure what a barbary ape actually is, but apparently it's native to North Africa. And apparently experts are still baffled on how it got here. I've read that it was likely, a gift, or that it was imported. I don't know. I hope he had a nice life at Emain Macha.
Is that the same monkey we were reading about that came over? They must have brought over in the ship or something like that.
I think so.
Ships, like.
Yeah, I think we were reading about this a few months back.
Yeah, a few months back, yeah. I couldn't believe it's like, what are they doing with a monkey head here? And
I know, because we obviously don't have any monkeys native to Ireland, and you don't really see monkeys here at all outside of a zoo. I don't think I've ever even met a person that has one as a pet. So obviously it tells you the kind of people that were knocking around Emain Macha back in the day. A very exciting and vibrant place. Emain Macha actually appears on a map made by Ptolemy in the 2nd century. This was the seat of sort of the king of Ulster, who was a very, very important man. And although it's called Navan Fort, it appears to never actually really have been a fort. Certainly not for defensive purposes anyway. There was a ditch found inside the enclosure of the the mound, what they refer to as the ring fort on top of the mound. But the fact that the ditch was found inside the outer ring shows that it was used for symbolic purposes, most likely, rather than for actual defence, which is really interesting, especially if you're as fascinated by ditches as I am. Another thing that I thought was fascinating is that there was a temple on site at some point around the 1st century, which seems to have been a really exciting time. Around that time, there was the destruction of a temple. Now, it wasn't gold like it looks here, it wasn't a golden temple, but it is a nice depiction of what we'd know as a roundhouse. And it seems as though, whilst this structure may have been in use as a temple for some time, in 95 BC it was filled with stones and then burned to create a cairn. You can see, well, not quite a cairn, but you can see here the sort of pile of stones that was left after this timber structure was burned down, which is fascinating. Like, what did it mean to the people at the time? What was the spiritual significance of that? Was it connecting with the other world? Was it commemorating the ancestors? Maybe it was just that the temple had fallen out of use and needed to be taken care of, so to speak. We don't really know right now, but I think that's one of the things that has me fascinated in ancient history and prehistory, is that we're finding out new stuff every day. And Emain Macha, or Navan Fort, is actually kind of a greater complex of different forts and different significant sites, and one of them is Haughey's fort. And I see here that there was actually cup and ring marks found at Haughey's fort. Now, any of you who watches all of my videos know why I'm getting excited about cup and ring marks. Is we had some pretty unusual examples of those in Drummurrell in County Monaghan near Inniskeen at the ancient stone art that I recorded and uploaded to my channel. I'll put the link here now. And it seems there was an example of this found at Haughey's fort as well. This stone was made from sandstone, and it has 2 concentric rings with a grooved tail. Again, for some possible meanings on the cup and ring marks, check out the video linked above. Then it was time to make our way up to Navan Fort itself. Don't worry, we will come back and visit the other 3 sites associated with Emain Macha at some point, now that we know how to get here. 7,500 years this place has been in use, or at least that's what the evidence seems to tell us anyway. And it's named for Macha, who was a goddess essentially in ancient Ireland. She was associated with the pangs of Ulster, which I've mentioned somewhere else on the channel. When did I mention them, Dave?
I have no idea.
I was talking about Cuchulainn, that's what it was, and that the reason that he was facing Queen Maeve's army single-handed was because Macha had placed a curse on all the men of Ulster that they should suffer the pangs of childbirth for, what was it, a period of 9 months or something like that. Basically they were busy when Queen Maeve and her army arrived, so Cuchulainn had to take care of it by himself. Do you think, will we walk around it or walk up through the middle, Dave?
I think walk up through the middle.
Let's go.
But we'll go round the ditch then afterwards.
Yeah, we'll have to do a wee lap at the ditch, won't we?
Yeah, we were rude not to.
And I see a sign up ahead, so something to read when we get to the top anyway. So this is it, we've reached the mound, and I think this is what we were talking about earlier with the temple. You can see they've got like a sort of cross-section drawing of it here. And there were apparently 3 stages of construction. First of all, a 40-metre wooden structure was built around here. You can see it's a great spot for it. You can see for miles and miles and miles in all directions. And then that's what we were talking about earlier, the second stage at some point. We don't know if they used this maybe for a long period of time or what the story was with it, but the second thing they did then was to fill it all up with stones and boulders and rocks and that, and then they set it on fire deliberately. The excavation team found the charred remains of what appeared to have been bundles of twigs placed against the wall to set it alight. Like, imagine that. Just hold on for a second, right? You want to talk forensics? You know, I mean, these days insurance companies have a hard time proving that a fire was started deliberately. Who are these superstar archaeologists that can tell us that this thing was burnt down deliberately over 2,000 years ago, okay? These need to be hired by An Garda Síochána or the insurance companies or whoever the highest bidder is. I hope they're getting paid good money. So anyway, the third thing that they did then, after it was all kind of charred to nothing but a pile of stones, then they covered it in earth and in turf and, you know, the sod. They essentially covered it in over, it looks like deliberately, so that it would grow over nice and green. And that's a thing I've often wondered about ancient forts and ancient mounds, is that a lot of the time when we see them thousands of years after they were built, they are covered over with grass. In fact, some of them have gone undetected for long periods of time, and there may be many more that we just haven't found yet. And it's because sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference between what's just a normal hill or the peak of a hill and what is actually a man-made mound. Now, there are key features, you know, if you can see the markings of a circular outer ring or an embankment or a ditch or something around the edge of it, there's a very good chance that a man had a hand in creating that. But I think it's fascinating. That's the first kind of confirmation that we seem to have of them deliberately covering it over with grass, which, you know, I mean, if I was going to build a house today and I had free reign with planning permission and with funds, I'd really love to build something into the earth and have it covered over with grass too, because I believe in having a low impact on the environment you're around, which seems really contradictory to some of the really large stone monuments that they've created over thousands of years. So I often wondered, was it always a case of making a big statement on the landscape? Was it always creating a landmark? Or like we have cathedrals in the last few hundred years where you're meant to see them and go, oh, wow. It's interesting, you know, that sometimes it was important to them to kind of tuck it back into the landscape, that it can have spiritual significance without sticking out like a sore thumb. I think one of my favourite finds from the Navan complex is probably the horn or the trumpet that was found at Loughnashade. Now, Loughnashade is essentially a lake to the east, just here of Navan Fort, and in 1798, right, there was rebellion happening in Ireland, in certain parts of Ireland, but up here somebody was digging a drain and they came across 4 Iron Age trumpets, and nearby there were several human skulls found. I don't know what was going on there, but that does sound like a hell of a party. And you don't often come across musical instruments in Ireland's ancient landscape, or maybe you do, but I certainly haven't seen all that many. There's a beautiful replica of it just down there in the Visitors Centre, and it took all my willpower not to give it a wee blow. But yeah, such a rich landscape. There's just so much to discover and to explore up here. If you're into archaeology, this place is like a gold mine, right? I think there's just about time for a wee quick cup of tea before we head on, Dave, is there?
Oh, sure, it has to be done.
Oh, it has to be done. But this place is really close to home as well, isn't it? How long did it take us to drive up here?
It's about 4 fields over, isn't it?
Dave's slagging me now because I've started measuring our road trips and you know, how many fields is left. The sat nav will tell him 300 metres, 200 metres, 100 metres. Dave panics. He doesn't know what 300 metres looks like, so I tell him how many fields away it is, and it's serving us pretty well so far, isn't it? How many fields is it between here and Dundalk, Dave?
How big are the fields?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. So hit subscribe for more fun and witchy adventures. I upload usually 2 to 3 times a week at the minute, and you're not going to want to miss it. Slán agus beannacht, goodbye, and good luck to you.